Mazda dealerships already know which habits are quietly killing your engine. They just never tell you. Why? Because a blown motor at 100,000 miles means a brand new car sale for them, not a warranty claim they have to eat. Today we are exposing 13 ignored habits deciding whether your Mazda hits 300,000 miles or dies broken and stripped for parts. Stick around for the final habit, the one every single other habit on this list secretly depends on. Number 13. Stop ignoring your oil change. Interval Mazda's Skyactiv G engines use direct injection. This means fuel sprays straight into the cylinder instead of mixing in the intake first. That design boosts power and fuel economy. It also turns cheap oil into a carbon buildup machine over time. Dealerships love upselling 5,000-mile severe service packages. Honestly though, that is not the real danger here. The real danger is skipping full synthetic oil entirely. Many owners just grab whatever conventional oil is cheapest on the shelf. A Mazda 3 owner named Derek did exactly that for years to save a few bucks. By around 100,000 miles, his engine was ticking like a clock shop every cold morning. Full synthetic 0W20 is not optional on these engines. It is basically survival gear for the internals. Skip it and you are inviting sludge to a party it never leaves. Think of the oil as the only thing standing between your engine and metal, grinding against metal. It protects your car every single time you turn the key. Here's the number that should scare you straight. Sludge-related failures on direct injection engines almost always show up between 80,000 and 120,000 miles. This happens right when owners assume the car is finally broken in and safe. Derek's ticking engine eventually needed a full valve cover reseal and a top-end clean-out that cost him over $800. He never had to spend that money if he had just paid an extra few dollars per oil change for the good stuff. That is the real math here. You can pay a few dollars now, or $800 later. And here is the part that really stings. That same math repeats itself across almost every habit on this list. It is a choice between a tiny, boring expense today or a genuinely painful bill down the road. But oil is just the opening act. The next habit is the one that quietly kills turbocharged Mazdas from the inside out. Most owners do it every single day without knowing it. Habit number 12, never shut off a hot turbo. Immediately, if you drive a CX-9, a CX-50, or a Mazda 6 with the 2.5-liter turbo engine, listen closely. This one is sneaky. That turbocharger spins at insanely high speeds and gets scorching hot under hard acceleration. Slam it into park and kill the engine right after a spirited highway run. If you do this, the oil sitting inside that turbo housing basically cooks itself into a hardened varnish. That varnish slowly clogs the tiny oil passages that keep the turbo bearings alive and spinning smoothly. A 30-second cool down before shutoff costs you absolutely nothing but a little patience. Ignoring it costs you a turbo replacement. That job can run close to $2,000 depending on the shop. Some shops will not even tell you this is why your turbo failed. They will just hand you the invoice and let you assume it was bad luck. Think about how often you actually do this without noticing, pulling into the garage right after a quick highway merge. Cutting the engine the second the door is open is a terrible mistake. That habit alone, repeated for years, is exactly how a perfectly healthy turbo starts making a whining noise nobody wants to hear. If your Mazda has a turbo badge anywhere on the trunk lid, this single habit alone matters. It might be worth more to your engine's lifespan than every other item on this entire countdown combined. Turbo damage is simply one of the most expensive single repairs a Mazda owner can face, so let it idle for at least 30 seconds before you cut the engine off completely. And speaking of habits people quietly ignore until it costs them thousands, subscribe right now if you want the rest of this list. Habit number 11 involves a tiny part that most owners have never even heard of. If you're learning something new here, consider subscribing now to help support the channel. Habit number 11, do not ignore the PCV valve. The positive crankcase ventilation system on Skyactiv engines routes built up gases out of the crankcase. This ensures pressure never has a chance to build to dangerous levels. In colder climates, that little valve can actually freeze solid or gum up with moisture over time. When it does, oil gets forced out through seals and gaskets it was never meant to escape from. Mazda has fielded real owner complaints tied to exactly this issue on Skyactiv engines during freezing winter weather. A clogged or frozen PCV valve is cheap to replace, usually under $50 in parts if caught early. Ignore it long enough though, and you're looking at blown gaskets and mystery oil leaks. You will also get a burning smell that sends you into a panic somewhere on the highway. Owners in cold weather states report this exact symptom every single winter. They notice oil pooling under the car right after the first hard freeze of the season. Almost nobody connects it to a $50 valve until a mechanic points it out. It is genuinely one of the most overlooked 5-minute checks in the entire Mazda lineup. It takes almost no mechanical skill to inspect yourself with a flashlight and a little curiosity. This is unlike half the repairs on this list that genuinely need a trained set of hands. It is such a tiny, forgettable part for such a genuinely big headache down the road. But the next habit is even sneakier, hiding inside a fluid most people assume never needs attention at all. Habit number 10, change your automatic transmission. Fluid. Plenty of manufacturers love to claim their transmission fluid is a lifetime fill. Mazda's 6-speed Skyactiv Drive Automatic is not one of those magical unicorns, no matter what the book says. That fluid breaks down under constant heat and friction. It degrades just like every other fluid in the car, with moving parts inside it. A Mazda owner named Priya learned this lesson the hard way. Priya believed the lifetime fluid myth for 120,000 miles straight. Her transmission eventually started shifting rough, hunting between gears like it genuinely forgot how to drive smoothly. A simple fluid and filter service around every 60,000 miles keeps those internal clutch packs happy. It ensures they keep gripping the way they should so you can drive without worry. Skip it entirely, and you are gambling with a transmission replacement bill. That bill can cost more than the car is even worth on paper, meaning you could total your car through neglect. Nobody wants to explain to their mechanic why they trusted a marketing buzzword over their actual owner's manual. Priya's repair quote came back at over $3,000 for a rebuilt transmission. That painful bill could have been completely avoided with a handful of $60 fluid services. Spending that small amount spread out over 10 years of ownership would have saved her car. She later told her mechanic she genuinely thought lifetime meant lifetime. That is exactly the confusion that cost Mazda owners thousands of dollars every single year across the country. It is all triggered by one misleading word printed in a glossy brochure nobody double-checked against the actual service manual, and the next habit involves a part so small most people forget it even exists. It stays forgotten right up until it leaves them stranded on the shoulder in the middle of nowhere. Habit number 9, replace spark plugs. On schedule, not when they fail. Direct injection engines like the Skyactiv G do not self-clean their intake valves. Older port injection engines used to do this, but now carbon slowly builds up on the valves over time. This layout means carbon deposits pile up no matter what fuel additive you dump in the tank. What you can actually control is your regular spark plug replacement schedule. Iridium plugs on most Skyactiv engines are rated for roughly 60,000 to 100,000 miles. The exact number depends heavily on your specific model and trim. Push way past that window, and you start dealing with misfires and a rough idle. You will also get a check engine light that shows up at the absolute worst possible moment, usually mid-road trip. Worn plugs also make that carbon buildup problem even worse. Inefficient combustion leaves more residue behind with every single drive cycle you take. Fresh plugs on schedule are one of the cheapest insurance policies you can buy for a Mazda engine, full stop. A set of quality iridium plugs usually costs less than a single tank of premium gas. This makes the decision to skip them almost embarrassing in hindsight. Think of it this way, you would never drive on bald tires to save money, and worn spark plugs deserve that exact same respect. This is true even though nobody can actually see them without popping the hood and digging around a little. Plugs are the cheap insurance, but this next habit is the expensive insurance most owners ignore. Habit number 8, get a walnut shell. Blasting service for carbon buildup. Remember that direct injection carbon problem we already mentioned twice? Here's the actual permanent fix for it that dealerships rarely talk about. Around 60,000 to 80,000 miles, Skyactiv G intake valves accumulate enough hardened carbon to choke off proper airflow. This restriction quietly hurts your fuel economy and power. A walnut shell blasting service physically blasts that carbon away. It uses soft walnut shell media that will not scratch or damage the valves underneath it. It typically runs a few $100s at a good independent shop. That sounds like a lot until you compare it to the massive alternative bills down the road. Skip this maintenance entirely, and problems will arise by around 150,000 miles. You could be dealing with a rough idle and hesitation off the line. Your check engine light will also throw lean misfire codes at you constantly. A mechanic named Thomas specializes in Mazda repairs and sees this issue all the time. He says most of his carbon buildup customers had absolutely no idea this service even existed. They only found out when their car started stumbling embarrassingly at every stoplight. Nobody warns you about this at the dealership finance desk when you're signing paperwork. Thomas says the giveaway is almost always the same for these cars. A Mazda that used to idle silky smooth suddenly feels like it has a slight tremor at red lights. Owners just assume that is normal for an aging car instead of a fixable carbon problem. A quick carbon cleaning service now genuinely beats a full valve job later. The difference in cost is not even close when you compare them side by side. We are talking a few $100s now versus a repair bill that can easily creep into the thousands. This happens once carbon deposits start affecting your engine's compression, but rust is the next enemy on this list, and it does not care one bit how well your engine happens to run. Habit number 7. Rinse the undercarriage. If you live where roads get salted. Mazda has dealt with real, documented rust concerns on certain older models. This is especially true in states that heavily salt their roads every single winter. Frame rust and subframe corrosion are not internet myths. They are a documented part of Mazda's history in the Rust Belt region of the country. Road salt eats away at bare metal quietly, hiding underneath the car in places you genuinely never think to look. By the time you notice a hole, the damage is done. Structural components underneath could already be seriously compromised by then. A simple undercarriage rinse after winter driving washes that corrosive buildup away before it can settle. It is especially important after driving on slush and heavily salted roads. Most car washes now offer an underbody spray option for just a few extra dollars. It takes about 10 minutes at a self-serve car wash with a decent pressure hose. Skip it for years in a row, and you might end up with a car that fails state inspection completely. Far worse, you could end up with a frame that cannot safely support a jack anymore. Rust simply does not forgive procrastination, and it never negotiates with owners. Have you ever popped the hood on an older Mazda from a snowy state and noticed orange flaking around the frame rails? Comment below if you have seen this happen. That small detail tells you exactly how much undercarriage care that specific car actually got over the years. Rust never announces itself with a bright warning light on your dash. It just spreads silently until a mechanic points at a hole and asks how long that has been there. That is a question that never has a good answer once you are standing in the repair bay. Habit number 6. Do not neglect your coolant system. Coolant is not just sitting there to prevent overheating in the middle of summer. It also actively prevents corrosion inside your engine block and radiator all year round. Mazda's factory coolant is a long life formula, but long life absolutely does not mean forever. It does not matter what the color on the cap implies to you. Old tired coolant loses its corrosion inhibitors over time. This means it slowly starts attacking the very aluminum components it was originally designed to protect. A neglected coolant system can lead to a clogged radiator or a failing water pump. In the worst case scenario, it can cause a cracked cylinder head from serious overheating on the highway. Flushing your coolant around the manufacturer's recommended interval is genuinely cheap. It is a tiny expense compared to what happens if you let it slide for years. A cracked cylinder head repair can climb well past $2,000. Meanwhile, a standard coolant flush usually costs less than dinner for two at a nice restaurant. That is not a close comparison, and it is barely even a decision once you look at the numbers. Always keep an eye on your system to avoid these massive issues. Unlike some fluids, low or dirty coolant usually gives you a visible warning first. You will see a temperature gauge creeping upward if you are paying attention to your dashboard. If this list has already saved you from a costly mistake sitting in your driveway right now, hit that like button. It honestly helps this channel keep making videos exactly like this one. And the next habit is about the one warning light almost everybody loves to ignore the longest. Habit number 5. Never drive on. A glowing check. Engine light. That little orange light on your dashboard is not decoration, and it never has been. It could mean anything from a loose gas cap to a failing catalytic converter. The only real way to know is to get it scanned by someone who knows what they are reading. A Mazda CX-5 owner named Wesley ignored this warning for months. Wesley drove around for 3 straight months with his check engine light glowing because the car still ran fine. It turned out to be a failing oxygen sensor. The sensor was quietly dumping extra raw fuel into the engine. This process was slowly washing protective oil right off his cylinder walls every single drive he took. By the time he finally got it properly checked, he needed brand new piston rings and a partial rebuild. The job ran him close to $3,000 in total labor. All of this was traced back to one sensor that never should have been ignored for 3 months straight. Wesley admits now that he thought the light would just go away. That is exactly the kind of wishful thinking that turns a $15 fix into a $3,000 lesson. A cheap $15 code reader could have saved him. You could also get a free scan at most auto parts stores in your area. It could have been fixed before it had any chance to snowball into something a simple sensor swap couldn't touch. Ignoring that light is basically ignoring a doctor who is telling you something is wrong with your health. And speaking of things people ignore, the next habit involves a hidden all-wheel drive fluid. Habit number 4, service your rear. Differential, fluid on all-wheel drive models. If you drive an all-wheel drive CX-5, CX-9, or Mazda Hags, listen up. There is a rear differential back there, working hard every single time power shifts for extra traction. That differential has its own dedicated fluid that is completely separate from the transmission fluid. Most owners have genuinely never heard a single word about it. Neglect that fluid for long enough, and the gears grinding away inside slowly start chewing themselves up. They leave sharp metal shavings floating around in old, broken-down fluid. A rear differential fluid change is usually a small fraction of the cost of a full differential rebuild. A rebuild can easily run well over $1,000 depending on shop rates. Most independent shops can knock out a fluid change in under an hour while you wait in the lobby. This is exactly the kind of fluid dealerships mention once at delivery and then forget. Miss it, and you might end up paying for a mistake that started with a maintenance sheet. It happens because nobody in the family actually sat down and read the manual. Ask yourself right now, when was the last time anyone even mentioned your rear differential fluid? If the honest answer is never, that alone tells you everything you need to know. Go check your maintenance record tonight, right after this video ends. This is the fluid that separates high-mileage Mazdas from ones that get parted out early. But the next habit is about something that happens before you even shift the car into drive. Habit number 3, let your turbo engine warm up. Before hard acceleration, jumping into a cold. Mazda first thing in the morning and immediately flooring it feels satisfying. This is especially true on the turbo models, but it is a terrible idea. It is absolutely brutal on a turbocharged engine's internal components. Cold oil is thick, sluggish oil that does not flow well when things are freezing. Thick oil simply does not flow fast enough to properly lubricate a spinning turbo shaft. Give it 30 seconds to a full minute of gentle driving before you push it hard. This step is especially important during the colder months of the year. It sounds almost too simple to matter, but simple habits make all the difference for longevity. They are exactly what separate engines that see 300,000 miles from engines that give up early. A mechanic named Renata runs her own independent shop and agrees. She says she sees far more premature turbo wear from cold, aggressive morning starts than from high mileage. It costs you nothing but a little patience behind the wheel. Skipping it costs you turbo bearings that wear out years before they were ever designed to fail. It quietly shortens the life of the most expensive spinning part under your hood. Renata says the fix is almost laughably simple for any car owner. Just drive gently for the first mile every single time, making no exceptions and no excuses. And the next habit might honestly be the most overlooked mechanical component on the entire car. Habit number 2, replace engine and transmission mounts. When they wear out, mounts hold your engine and transmission securely in place under the hood. They absorb vibration so the entire drivetrain is not just rattling loosely around when you accelerate. Over roughly 100,000 miles, rubber mounts naturally break down and crack. They slowly lose their cushioning ability altogether as time goes on. A worn mount lets the engine physically shift under hard acceleration. This movement puts uneven, repeated stress on your exhaust system, your radiator hoses, and your CV axles. Most owners just assume their car feels a little rougher as it ages. They shrug that off as normal, boring aging, which is a major misconception. It is the same way people assume creaky knees are just part of getting older instead of addressing it. It is not normal at all, and it is a worn part that needs replacing. Fixing them usually costs just a few $100s total in parts and labor combined. Ignore worn mounts long enough, and you start quietly damaging every component sitting around them. One small failure at a time will turn a $200 mount job into a cascading repair bill. That massive bill will quickly touch half the engine bay components. If your Mazda has developed a new clunk or shudder on acceleration, look into it immediately. This is genuinely the very first thing worth checking before you assume the worst. A mount replacement is a fraction of the cost of chasing phantom noises for months. And now, for the habit that actually ties every single one of these 12 together. Habit number 1. Never skip the manufacturer's service schedule, even when the car feels perfectly fine. Here is the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to hear. Every single habit on this entire list traces back to one root cause that ruins perfectly good cars. People skip scheduled maintenance simply because the car still feels totally fine to drive. Mazdas do not announce internal wear with dramatic, obvious warning signs early on. Expensive damage has already quietly happened under the hood by the time you notice. The owner's manual maintenance schedule is not some suggestion you can casually push back. It is the literal blueprint the actual engineers who built your engine wrote specifically for you. A Mazda technician named Owen has watched this exact pattern play out for years. Cars that get every single scheduled service reliably hit 300,000 miles. Meanwhile, identical cars that get random oil changes reliably die somewhere around 150,000. It is the exact same engine off the same factory line. It is the same dealership, the same starting price, and the same warranty booklet handed over on day one. They have completely different outcomes, all because one owner trusted the schedule and the other one trusted their gut instead. Your Mazda does not need luck to last. It needs a calendar, a mechanic you genuinely trust, and the discipline to show up for service. You have to go even when absolutely nothing feels wrong with the car yet. Owen puts it simply, the 300,000-mile Mazdas in his shop are not lucky. They are loved in the most boring, unglamorous spreadsheet sense of the word. There is no secret hack, no miracle additive. and no shortcut that replaces consistency. Every habit we covered today is just a piece of that same larger discipline. Put them all together, and you get a Mazda that quietly outlives cars that cost twice as much. Skip them, and your car will die exactly when people expect an economy car to die. The choice, every single time, comes down to you and your calendar. Thanks for watching. If you found these Mazda habits helpful, let us know down in the comments section. We genuinely read every single one that comes through and often turn your questions into future videos. Want to see which used Mazdas are actually worth buying right now? Click the video on your screen right now to find out. And if you don't want to miss more car secrets like this one, hit that subscribe button before you go.